Hey everyone, Cryptalk here. So, I've noticed that a lot of my previous videos, or at least a few of them in recent times, have been pretty negative about cryptocurrency in general. And I just want to talk about that a little bit and explain, you know, I'm I still find a use for this stuff. It's not that I don't find a use for it. It's not that I don't think it's good for its specific niche. Um, but it is actually worth bringing up on some fronts because, as far as I could tell, like there are a lot of people who are still very much not understanding exactly what it is that they're that would actually work with this with the technology. They think that okay, um, let's just make a cryptocurrency game and then just put all of the gameplay on a dedicated servers or some kind of centralized system. And that's really not how a cryptocurrency game should work. Honestly, that's absolutely terrible, and it's horrible logic and everything like that. Now, it's actually not impossible for me to really actually give some examples of games that would actually function correctly. Um, that would actually be something that would be worth pursuing. Uh, I'm not really sure exactly to what ends these kinds of games would result in. But it's not just games either. There's an example of like ownership of items, utilizing IPFS in combination in tandem with Ethereum, for example. All you need to do is store a IPFS hash. IPFS is an interplanetary file system. It's a way to store files that are not really owned by any one specific entity. In other words, you can have this one hash that's sort of um, thrown out onto the internet, and anyone who wants that file, or anyone can pin that file, in which case they get a copy of that file stored locally under that same exact hash, verifiably that it's the same exact file. Um, and the more people who have it pinned, if anyone takes that one pin down, it doesn't matter because there's like four other people who have the file pinned. And if you have the file, stored on a local server in your house, for example, and that is utilizing that same IPFS hash, then you can then you can you can verify that you actually do have 100% ownership of the item, because you can even take it down if you want at some point in time, and it's up to you. Now, that may not necessarily be the case, because if somebody who is abroad decides to pin that file themselves, they would be the owners. They would not the owners. They would be able to have that IPFS hash with the file, um, and others would still be able to access the file. So even you wouldn't really have the ability to take the file down ever. Cryptocurrency and IPFS work very well as a team. So, I mean, I can probably go into a lot of reasons why. Like, I should probably explain why certain things like card games and things of that nature don't really work with that. See, cryptocurrency works within an enclosed system, right? An enclosed system requires you to have, there's nothing can really be from the outside. So if you have a dedicated server, then you're not really using the enclosed system anymore. It's the hardest thing to understand about this, but it's definitely something that requires you to get the point. Finally, I really want people who see this. I know very few who actually watch this. A lot of people wanna just believe that this is like some future panaxia, that we're all rushing into the future of decentralized gaming, but they design their games utilizing centralized servers. It's like, what are you actually doing here? You're just conning people out of their money. So let me take an example here of like a card game, right? You have a card that's worth $10,000, right? But the thing is that you're still utilizing centralized servers. I believe games like Gods Unchained and Steam Monsters. There are a lot of games that are like just they're not entirely on-chain games, right? In other words, when you're actually playing it, you have to depend on the owners of the game to allow you to play it? What if you have a name that is like a racist name or something? What if you have something that would normally get you banned? Well, they are the ones who would now have to actually ban you from the game because you're not following their rules, right? In the world of cryptocurrency, code is law. That's how that just works. And even that is a little bit iffy sometimes, but within reason, it's really hard to let's just say that you could probably say and do just about anything you want on a blockchain, and the only consequences that you would face would be the same that you would face for doing something physically in real life, like doing something wrong, like stealing or whatever, right? But if you get away with it, you get away with it. There's no rolling back of transactions. There's no ability to prevent people from actually joining the server or whatever, right? And then usually it's 9 times out of 10 it's anonymous with cryptocurrency as well. So you don't really actually know who's who, and you have to use this thing called chain analysis, in which you can actually uh, be able to like try and dox somebody or figure out what they're using their money for, right? Well, in the particular case, a lot of the times these people who are developing these centralized games, they don't even realize what the consequences are, ultimately speaking, because cryptocurrency hasn't really reached a fever pitch as far as politics goes, when this shit actually does actually play a little bit of a role in pretty much collapsing some kind of an economy. um, Maybe the global economy could be partially messed up, but I'm telling you right now, if you could store all of your money on some decentralized ledger, you don't really need to have a bank account. Now, you could say, well, what about the fluctuations? You got stable coins and stuff. I'm sorry. Like, the argument to be able to keep your money on a bank is getting pretty thin. And it's less people. It takes a lot of people out of the equation, just like automation does for everything. So, all right. So, when these card dealers, like, they just give these I'm calling them card dealers, like drug dealers or something. These people who make these decentralized card games, they need to be able to balance the game, right? So if the item, the token that you own, that says that I own one of these cards, that's on the blockchain, but the game requires dedicated servers or is being run on some kind of like separate system outside of the blockchain, not just the smart contract logic alone, then what happens is they can say, well, yeah, you own one of those, but we have to remove it from tournaments, or we own one of those, but it was too powerful, we had to nerf it. Sorry. Or you own one of those. Hey, we gave you two of them instead of just one because it's some promotional thing, right? Or I mean, guess that's not actually. We took one of them away and gave you a different card instead. So it now represents a different card. This token that you had now represents a different card in game. If the item is located on the game itself, then that is a separate code. That is a completely separate entity. It's a completely separate thing. If the logic is contained within the enclosed system of the blockchain, then it ends up being something that is, uh, well, that is verifiably. Well, it's a decentralized, it's unregulatable. You can't change those things, right? You can't just nerf a card that somebody actually owns in the blockchain, because if that's how the game is working and that's how the smart contract functions, then that would be, well, nobody would be able to really do anything unless they forked the fucking game, and that's a whole nother topic. So yeah, that's actually a whole nother topic. That is really a whole nother topic. Patching a true cryptocurrency game is a huge undertaking. No, no. In the case of something like Gods Unchained or whatever, you have this $10,000 card. You know what? And let me stop mentioning just specifically Gods Unchained. It's any game that is not that is claiming that you have true ownership of your items, that still requires you to not utilize the blockchain for certain transactions or actions or things, right? It doesn't matter what it is. It just is. Anything that fits within that category is a game that they can take your items away. You don't actually have ownership. They can do anything they want with it. They can represent the token however they want within that gaming space, and they will probably get sued into the ground eventually. Because if I own a $10,000 card that I could use in a tournament, and they actually decide, well, you know what, that $10,000 card, well, that's just not allowed in tournaments, or it's not allowed anymore. We're going to just ban it from the game and completely because it completely wrecks and unbalances the game. Then I'm suing them motherfuckers because that card's not worth anything now. They just took my fucking money. Like they're probably one of the devs is probably one of the ones who sold me the damn thing in the first place, full well knowing that the card was going to drop in price. Oh, that's fucked up. Like, do you want that kind of a horror story? I don't. If you're gonna end up having that, but not only that. Okay, so let's go down this the other scenario. What if what about people who are like, well, cryptocurrency is the future of gaming in general? And I'm thinking to myself, like, you want every game to work on a super slow, expensive ledger where it costs money to do every single transaction? That's what you're getting at. Because that's what that means. Because that's what that means. Um, oh yeah, but well, if it's proof of stake, then it doesn't really cost money. Yeah, it does. It costs people staking the resources. Somebody has to do something somewhere along the line. Okay, all proof of stake does is it just delegates things around a little bit differently. It means that you can have your free transactions, but somebody still has to pay for those nodes. Somebody still has to run nodes and still be incentivized, which then in fact causes deflation, or at least a certain degree of deflation, which may not result in a deflationary token, but it still means that you gain less money in the future. You're still paying for it. You're still paying for it. It just happens differently. Do you understand? So there's no free. The world doesn't work with free. Free doesn't happen. Okay? So you want everything to be like that? Not only that, but you want to also make it so that every single player, whoever plays your game, kills some random monster in the middle of a forest on your centralized server and gets a token that's worth X amount of money, and then they have to actually report that to the government because of taxes? And you think that that's the fucking future of gaming? Nobody's going to want to put up with that shit. You could play Diablo 3 right now, and you can get all the loot you want, and you never have to once think about fucking writing down on a notepad that you got a fucking shiny breastplate, chainmail or some shit, um, because you were just playing one day. Like, yeah, I'm gonna report this to my CPA. Hey, I can't wait. I can't wait. The future of gaming. I guess the future of gaming is gonna be pretty fucking dystopian if that's the future of gaming. No, it's certain types of games only. Okay? And it's not going to be every one of them because if you do it this way, you cause problems. You cause a lot of issues, and you utilize a system that needs that doesn't even offer the stuff that you're actually advertising that it might. It just becomes a buzzword at that point, and it's garbage. Nobody should ever want that, and nobody ever will. Okay? It's trash. Your game will never become popular if that's the kind of thing that you actually think is a good idea. Okay? Now, with that said, let's actually talk for just a brief moment about what would actually be a good example of a cryptocurrency game. Now, we could start with the simplest one, chess. Chess would be a good cryptocurrency game. You can play against any number of opponents at any point in time. What's the problem with chess? Well, chess can be botted. You can bot chess, and AI can play it better than people, and AI is getting, better and better every day, right? So maybe chess isn't the best example, but it's a example. Othello, chess, whatever, right? You have those really simple kinds of games. But maybe you change the rules so that you make it a lot harder for AI to actually be able to make decisions and stuff like that. And I don't know, it might not be that fun. Now let me explain something that would actually be a really great example of a cryptocurrency game. A cryptocurrency game where everything is in an enclosed system does not require dedicated servers. Are you ready to actually hear what a real cryptocurrency game would be like? You ever heard of Risk? Imagine owning land in a fantasy world on several continents, and at the start of the Genesis event, everyone who partook in the like the very few people who are allowed to actually participate start off in various different world areas and locations with different resources and everything like that all over the world, right? And all you do is you end up getting a little plot of land that ends up being something that belongs to you. And on that plot of land, everybody who first starts off in these Genesis events, they have like the ability to begin mining that resource, whatever resource that they have on that piece of land, right? And that resource that they obtain can then be traded in for infantry, horsemen, things like that. Defenses, offenses, the ability to defend yourself. You have like a different score for each one of the little areas that you actually control. And then you can then use after a while, you can very slowly build up those resources on that one piece of land and then move it out to the next one, and then you get another piece of land. So now you own two pieces of land, two little areas on these big continents, right? And there might be a player up here, there might be a player up there, there might be a player down here, and eventually everybody kind of starts to spread out and sort of taking over more and gaining more and more resources. And sometimes you get a little bit lucky, sometimes you click on it and you get a special, like, you found a diamond mine or you found a gold mine, right? And you can then like make sure that you build up your defenses around the outer ring of all of the different areas that you actually have, and you don't have to worry too much about the ones that are on the inner, on the inside and everything like that. And then boom, you eventually start to work your way towards somebody that's a friend of yours, right? And you own that land, and they own that land, and now you're friends, and you butt up against, next to each other, and you can now delegate resources to your friends. Now let's say that somebody who is an enemy or a stranger, a potential enemy, or something along those lines, they can actually come in and they can, butt up against your the outer edges of your territory. Now, at this point in time, the only way that you can actually fight them off or defend yourself is to have more resource put into the node that would end up attacking their node. In other words, if I have 1400 attack on this node and he has 1400 defense, then it would be a stalemate. And even if I did attack that node, it would just result in nothing, right? Now, if I decide to attack and I have 1600, I would end up taking over that little chunk of land, and I would get everything that he had staked in that area. Okay, so this is a very simple system. It's very enclosed. It's very much enclosed. It all works within the smart contract. It doesn't, require a very large amount of transactions because you could, even if you were playing the game fairly hardcore, you would probably only do maybe 2 or 3 transactions a day. And it would cost money to do each of those transactions, but you'd be doing something that's a little bit different from every other game. You would actually be waging war and defending and moving resources from, to other people. There would actually be an economy within the game where people would actually, make trade routes and stuff like that, or have like, land that belongs to them where it meets up in the middle, and you can actually delegate resources or buy and sell things, and you end up having like this kind of like, trade. And at any point in time, somebody can just decide to start taking over one of your territories, and then you can be like, hey bro, I need help over here. I know that you really like my wool sweaters that I keep making for you over because of this one little plot of land over here which has like a farm on it or something like that. And they would actually be able to say, oh well, no, this dickhead needs to quit it. So he rolls an attack, but at that very moment, they delegate, 200 defense or something like that, which just places them right over, places your little territory right over the limit. And now all of a sudden they're in danger because they might get a retaliation. Right? So most of the complexity of the game when it comes to something like Risk is within the politics of the human beings that are surrounding it, right? And a cryptocurrency-based game would actually work in a similar manner, right? So this would actually be a really good example of a game that would work in an entirely enclosed system where you actually do have ownership. If somebody takes your keys from you and they get your wallet from you, they pretty much take all your land. Now, the only problem I can imagine with a game like this overall would be that if it did exist, some motherfuckers would get killed. This would be a very serious game. This would actually be a very, very serious game. I'm pretty sure that, yes, after you release this thing onto the fucking existence of the internet, there's a very good chance that there will be some serious consequences to some people who decide to attack the wrong people at the wrong times and stuff like that. Outside of the game, I'm pretty sure. I mean, I've seen people get pretty violent over Counter Strike. I'm pretty sure that a game like this would, well, it would be like owning real land in a real country somewhere. It's fucking ridiculous to think about. There would definitely be some cement shoes at some point in time. So, yeah, but that's the kind of a game that would work very well. Now, these card games and stuff like that, I already explained why they wouldn't work. If you try to do an RPG or something like I have discussed in the past, what ends up happening is you end up with too many transactions per second. If you want to have dedicated servers, then if the company runs out of money, then the game goes down, and then all that money that you invested, all that time you invested for those items and stuff like that, pretty much just goes to waste because nobody's going to use them ever again. Because I would just want to make my own game. I wouldn't want to use somebody else's fucking shitty items. So every developer is going to be thinking the exact same thing. They don't want to fucking balance around this garbage that you fucking got from some other fucking game that was designed for, grow up and like uh, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Um, Only play real games, Sonny. So that with that said, yeah, when a game goes down, it's pretty much a certainty that your tokens are fucked. And I guess really to kind of conclude this, like that being like a really good example of it, but there's also the other example that I gave where IPFS and cryptocurrency usually work together. So anyway, with that said, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna end this video now. Um, Hope you enjoyed, and I really wish that there was a way to reach people on this. I don't think people understand what. Like, I don't think people actually really get it. It's not clicking yet. But okay, Risk would be a Risk like I just explained would be a pretty good example of a game that would work pretty much perfectly, like right now. You could put that shit on anything and it would work. So that's that. See you in the next one.